Welcome to the third installment of our four-part lecture series on the Federalist era. Today, we turn our attention to the foreign policy of George Washington, a topic that underscores the precarious position of the young American Republic in the 1790s. As the first president, Washington faced immense challenges in navigating a world dominated by powerful European empires and ongoing conflicts that threatened American sovereignty and stability. From the complex diplomacy surrounding Jay's treaty with Britain to the controversial neutrality proclaimed in the face of revolutionary fervor in France, Washington's foreign policy decisions reveal the delicate balancing act required to maintain national security and preserve economic interests. These early diplomatic maneuvers also laid the foundation for future American foreign policy, establishing key precedents that would shape the nation's international posture for decades to come. In this lecture, we will explore Washington's efforts to maintain American independence in foreign affairs, the political divisions these decisions created at home, and the lasting impact of his farewell address on the nation's foreign policy outlook. Let's dive in and consider how the father of the nation steered the ship of state through the turbulent waters of global diplomacy. The line separating foreign affairs and domestic matters in the new republic was often quite thin. America still needed to secure its borders against potentially hostile European powers. The British continued to occupy forts in the Old Northwest, which is the modern states of Ohio, Indiana, and Michigan, and engaged in trade with native people, including the sale of firearms. The Spanish presence in Florida and Louisiana gave them control of the Mississippi River, a vital artery for Western trade, and American shipping no longer enjoyed the protections of the British Navy. In the Mediterranean, pirates based in northern Africa harassed American ships and captured American sailors and cargoes. So in this particular lecture, we're going to focus on three different parts of Washington's foreign policy. We'll discuss first the relationship with France, then we'll look at the relationship with England, and finally the relationship between the United States and Spain. And we'll pick up with the Barbary pirates in the Mediterranean when we talk about John Adams' foreign policy. So if we start out by looking at the relationship between America and France in the 1790s, there are two big issues. The first is that the French are fighting the French Revolution. And the second is that the French are also engaging in war against the British, who they fought many times throughout history, as well as with the Spanish, especially for territory in the New World. And so if we look at U.S. history further back during the American Revolution, the French under Marquis de Lafayette had come and actually helped the Americans, and in particular, it was their naval force that had helped the Patriots to win their independence. And during this time period, the United States had actually signed an agreement that they would help the French during the French Revolution. And initially, both the Democratic Republicans as well as the Federalists wanted to support the French in their revolution and the revolutionary government. But as the revolution became more violent and you began to see more death, for example, the execution of Marie Antoinette and King Louis, as well as the use of the guillotine, which the French called the national razor, to kill anyone who was viewed as an enemy of this new revolutionary government, many of the Hamiltonians began to question their allegiance to the French. And so Thomas Jefferson, on the one hand, supported these revolutionaries. He believed that the overthrow of bad government should be done through the spilling of the blood of tyrants in order to instate a democratic government. On the other hand, the Federalists supported the king, and in particular, they wanted to make sure that they didn't ally with France, because it would have angered England, and the United States was attempting to rebuild its economy under Hamilton based on the British plan, which would have meant that we would need someone to buy our manufactured goods, and we would need a strong trade alliance with England. So George Washington comes in, and he creates something called the Neutrality Proclamation. And this proclamation says the United States will be friendly with both France and Great Britain, and it's not going to pick one side or the other. Instead, the U.S. needs to focus on issues at home and to ensure the stabilization of the new government so that this Republican experiment can last. Now, as a result of this, Thomas Jefferson actually resigns as Secretary of State, and he has these objections. That one, they're ignoring the treaties that were signed with the French during the American Revolution. And two, they're refusing to repay the French debt from the American Revolution, and that such conduct is unbecoming of a gentleman and also of a statesman. One of the most infamous scandals of George Washington's career centers around this issue between the United States and France, and it's called the Citizen Genet affair. Genet was the French foreign minister, and he became very angry when the United States refused to help France in their revolution, and also because the United States refused to help the French in their war against Spain and Great Britain. So he came to the United States, and he came to the people directly, without the approval of the president. And he began trying to recruit armed American privateers to join these French expeditions against the British. He also organized American volunteers to fight Britain's Spanish allies in Florida. And Washington viewed his actions as having endangered American neutrality in this war between France and Britain. And Washington knew that if Britain believed that the United States was supplying soldiers to France, then they would no longer have a good treaty with them, and this angered Washington, who wanted to extradite Citizen Genet to France. The problem with this is that the radical Jacobin Party had just taken power in France, so they had ordered the arrest of Citizen Genet, and Washington knew that if he sent him back, that this party would kill him as a traitor to the cause of the revolution. So George Washington very generously issued a pardon, and eventually Genet actually married the daughter of George Clinton, the governor of New York, and he became a United States citizen in a sort of happy ending to the affair. Over time, the issues between Britain and America began to boil over, despite this issuing of the Neutrality Proclamation. The big problem was that Britain started to impress U.S. soldiers, which meant that they would take American soldiers off of their own naval fleets and they would force them to come work on their ships. And they would also seize American ships in this effort to prevent any trade between the U.S. and France. And so Washington decided to send in John Jay, his Chief Justice, to negotiate an accord that was known as the Jay Treaty. The American public found the resulting agreement flawed, but for the most part it was accepted. Jay had to abandon the right of the United States to continue trading with France without British harassment, and he had to grant Britain the most favored nation status, giving up the American right to discriminate against British shipping and merchandise. He also had to confirm that the American commitment to repay Revolutionary War debts would be paid in full to the British. And in all of his treaty, he actually doesn't really even bring up the issue of impressment, or ensure that the British will stop impressing sailors. So in return for the major concessions that Americans make, the British pledge that they will compensate American merchants for their ships and their cargo that they seized between 1793 and 1794. They promised to abandon the 6 forts that they still held in the American Northwest, and also to grant the United States limited trading rights in India as well as the British West Indies. However, when the treaty was finally signed, it caused an uproar as Southerners saw it as a sellout to their interests, and they worried that impressment would continue. Our last bit of foreign policy to consider is the relationship between Spain and America. In the 1790s, the United States wanted the right to use the Mississippi River as well as the port of New Orleans that were owned by the Spanish. They were also angry over the fact that the Spanish had supported native attacks against colonists in the West. And so Thomas Pinckney, the United States ambassador to Spain, was sent by Washington to sign a treaty with Spain. And this treaty is known formally as the Treaty of San Lorenzo, and informally, it's known as Pinckney's Treaty of 1795. Now, the Spanish were willing to sign this treaty because, first of all, they felt threatened by the improved relationships between the United States and Great Britain after the Jay Treaty. And then secondly, because Spain was an ally with France, and they feared this sort of British retaliation if they didn't. So the Treaty of San Lorenzo gives the United States the right to transport goods on the Mississippi River, and also the right to store goods in the Spanish port of New Orleans. It yielded a large area of Florida, which had been disputed for years, and established the 31st parallel as the northern border of Florida. And this was defined first by the Treaty of Paris. In addition, Spain agreed to stop inciting native attacks against the Americans. And finally, it granted American farmers the right to transit through the port of New Orleans. In conclusion, the third part of our lecture series on the Federalist era has explored how President George Washington's foreign policy navigated the complex international landscape of the 1790s. We examined America's cautious stance toward the French Revolution, balancing ideological sympathy with the need for political neutrality. We also discussed the controversial Jay's Treaty with Great Britain, which sought to protect American trade interests while stirring domestic opposition. Finally, we saw how Pinckney's treaty with Spain secured crucial navigation rights on the Mississippi River, opening new avenues for Western expansion. Collectively, these diplomatic achievements reveal Washington's pragmatic approach to foreign affairs, prioritizing national security and economic stability while striving to maintain American independence from European entanglements. As we move to the final part of our lecture series, we will consider the political divisions that emerged during this time and how these tensions shaped the transition of power from Washington to his successor, John Adams.